everybody, and welcome. I'm so happy to have you all here with us today. Welcome to today's Webinar Wednesday, presented by the CAGP Foundation. My name is Tara Sandler. I'm the Vice President of Education and Partnerships here at CAGP. I'm very pleased to be able to be present with you today to moderate and help with some questions for today's great session, welcoming James Perkins and Conor Tapp, who will present a webinar on From the Mailbox to the Planned Giving Wall, Building the Relationships Your Charity Needs for Transformational Success. Before we begin, I would like to recognize the many territories of Turtle Island, here as we are known as Canada, on which we work and reside. I myself am located in Montreal, and it is historically known as a meeting place for the First Peoples and is located on the unceded traditional Indigenous territory of the Mohawk Nation. We at CAGP would like to recognize the many territories of Turtle Island on which we all work and reside. These territories are home to many Indigenous peoples who have lived here for tens of thousands of years and will continue to live here. We express our gratitude towards the people who steward our lands and waters and will continue to take care of them. For those of you on the call who don't know where you happen to be on and would like help in identifying the territory, take a moment to visit www.native-land.ca. So, folks, continue to file in from the waiting room. We are glad to have you here with us. And before we begin, I do have a couple of housekeeping items to share. While you are on this call, please keep your camera off and muted for the duration. We will be using the chat function in order to pose Q&A and any dialogue or comments. We are pleased to offer real-time transcription through the Zoom function, and all of those are at the bottom of your screen to enable the closed caption as well as real-time translation. You have the abilities to do that on your screen within the Zoom environment. You'll also note that when you receive the email from Aaron, there is a link to a Dropbox folder. So in that folder, you'll have all the information around your continuing education tracker sheets for today's session, as well as the PowerPoints. And so before I hand you, my wonderful audience, off to our presenters, I would like to take a moment to introduce Les Ross to share a few words from our generous sponsor, Pear Tree Canada. Les?
Thank you, Tara. On behalf of my colleagues across the country at Pear Tree Canada, we are proud to sponsor the CAGP Webinar Wednesday series and to welcome everyone to today's presentation. Pear Tree was founded 20 years ago to offer a unique and strategic approach to lowering the after-tax cost of giving using our flow-through-share donation platform. This proven platform is widely accepted by Canadian philanthropists and their tax, wealth, and legal advisors, even in the most complex financial scenarios. From grassroots organizations to large institutions, Pear Tree helps major gift donors give more, accelerating transformational gifts while simultaneously funding job creation in Canada's northern and remote communities. I encourage you to visit our website to learn more or reach out to my colleagues in the various markets across the country. Thank you for your attendance and participation today, and now please enjoy the webinar.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Les. And it was great to have some of your colleagues join CAGP and a number of our colleagues in Winnipeg. It seems like we were just there, and it was a great experience. So for many of you joining us on the call today, thank you for being there with us. And so now it is time to jump right in, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to today's presenters. James Perkins is a certified Eden Associate at Bethany Manor, Fund Development Coordinator with Brazen Consulting, Senior Development of Business Development. Conor Tapp is the lead Knowgoodnik and founder at Knowgood Consulting. Conor and James, thank you so much for being with us today. The floor is yours, and I will see you during Q&A.
Thank you so much, Tara, and thank you everyone for joining us. I'm just going to get my screen share set up and running here. And there we are. So, as Tara was saying, we are James and Conor. James is the Fund Development Coordinator at Bethany Manor and a consultant with Brazen Fundraising. He's been fundraising since 2008, and he's working really, really hard on donor retention across all stages of giving including planned gifts. And if you have questions about those things, he's got to talk to. My name is Conor Tapp. I'm the founder at Knowgood Consulting. I'm a Knowgoodnik. I've been fundraising since 1997, which feels like just this tiny little window of time and an eternity at the same time. I retired from active fundraising last year, and I'm now focused on strategy and the big moves that the organizations in our sector need to make in order to continue to have the impactful success that they obviously so need to have. Today's conversation, James, why don't you walk us through our agenda?
Absolutely. And thanks for the introduction, Connor. Appreciate you have an amazing radio announcer voice. So hard to follow that lead. But folks, today we're going to talk about understanding your baseline. That is, where are you at? Connor's going to lead you through gathering critical intelligence, presenting a strong narrative, and a constant, steady presence to your donors. We're going to talk about prospecting donors for more personalized conversations that move between somewhere in your media contact, they become people, and I'll be taking over that part of the conversation. I'm going to focus on how people give to people, and of course, I think most of us in this chat would know that. Relationship documentation is very important in our work. Long-term relationships, how do we keep in touch? Including some late life stage friendships that unfortunately are part of our worlds. And we'll move into an epilogue. We will have discussion and reflections later in the call. However, if you have a really burning, urgent question in the chat, please feel free to put it in. Tara and I and Connor will work together to field those calls as they're appropriate to set the tone when they're appropriate. So we're not ignoring you. We will try to work those in. But if we miss anything, of course, we'll catch it all up in the end. With that, I think I'll hand it back to you. Connor, take it away.
Yeah, let's get started. Let's start by really understanding our baseline, because what James is going to talk about is really those conversations that lead us to and result in planned gifts. But to get there, we need to understand our baseline, and we need some data, and we need to understand who our market is, and really making sure that we understand the right information so that we are putting our stories out on the right channels at the right times and the right stories, so that we can build stronger and more trusting bonds and enable new impact. And the reason why this is so important is we live in a world that is really dispersed. We are dispersed geographically. We're dispersed across time zones. Right now, today, we have people in sort of 3.5 hours across this country, 4.5 hours across the country. We're dispersed in terms of values and ideology and politics. And so how do we gather the right information to make sure that we're communicating in the right way for people so that they can actually hear us? Because it's not good enough in 2026 to throw a story out there, to throw spaghetti at the wall and hope that somebody pays attention to it. We need to be more strategic about it. We need to be thoughtful. And understanding that baseline means acknowledging that planned giving is sort of this existential thing that everybody thinks they understand, but very few people actually get it very, very well. And it's sort of the Gen X of fundraising. Everybody wants to do it. Everybody respects it. Everybody wants to play in the sandbox with it, but actually optimizing it and playing well with it seems to be something that we need to focus more on. We need to engage in more conversation about. And the other challenge here is that national and sector stats present an existential challenge in and of themselves, because there are organizations on this call that have entirely volunteer-led teams or one or two people on the staff complement. And then we have organizations that are pulling in close to $1 billion a year and that have fundraising machines running them and doing very impactful work. So those stats that say this percentage of donors will engage, or this thing works, or this is what your charity should be pulling in, just don't apply in so many scenarios. And so if we look at what are the key questions, what are the key data points that we want to look at, that's how we can start to build our baseline. And so those sector stats that can inspire us, that can inform what we're doing, really go to the ones you're already looking at. What are the sector stats? It's those who are leaving a gift or who have self-identified. What are those average amounts? And then donor activity. What's the retention? What's the giving? What's the engagement? When it comes to your work specifically, predictive and analytic uses for donor acquisition, donor retention year over year, donor engagement. So which emails are they actually opening, reading, clicking, going back to and opening again, forwarding to their mom, forwarding to their friend? That's what you want. And giving, what's the frequency? What are the amounts? What are the channels? What are the precursors? What's the story that they got? 24 hours, 72 hours, 3 days, 5 days before they made a gift? And what's your organization's compliance? And this is actually more important than everything else on my list. And it's more important than the economy when it comes to your success. And it's what is your organization's compliance to your stewardship grid, to your marketing plan, to your fundraising plan, to the promise that you made to yourselves, to your team, and to your donors that you are going to do a thing, that you're going to tell a story a certain way, that you're going to engage in a certain way. If you say we are going to thank every donor within 24 hours, within 72 hours, and you don't, that is a bigger marker, a bigger predictor of your success as an organization and as a fundraiser than the economy, than geopolitics, than everything that's going on in the world. It is critical that you understand your compliance, what the gaps are. It is not the end of the world if you're not compliant now. I can assure you, I've worked with many organizations. Nobody is 100% here, but it's identifying why you're not and working toward the solutions that can help you get where you need to go. And getting to know your donors, letting them get to know you, can be streamlined and simplified using AI and BI tools and scripts to track your data collection, to help with that, and to help with your reporting can free up as much as 30 to 60% of your fundraisers' time, pulling them away from sitting at a desk crunching data and actually giving them powerful tools. Microsoft Copilot, Google's Gemini, ChatGPT, and Claude are all fantastic tools that can do deep analysis for you, anonymized using only your donor IDs or your constituent IDs. Running that through, you can create fantastic lists of prospects, who you need to be talking to, how you need to be talking to them. These are great tools. You can build easy call and response vehicles based on that data, tell clear and concise stories and narrative. So making sure that people understand what it is that you're saying. Don't be nuanced anymore. This is 2026, and people need us to speak very, very clearly. There's so much noise out there. We need to be clear. And use donor surveys that ask the right questions that will actually move the needle for you. Use a question to inform not only you, but the donor as well. And I'm going to ask James to just talk a little bit about our mortality before I dive into questions.
Thanks, Conor. Each of us at certain times in our life have to confront our mortality. Statistically speaking, we know that for most people, they start to have that conversation in their head with their spouse, with their family, when they enter their 60s. Typically, this is when people are starting to think about retirement or they've moved to retirement. What do I still want to do with my life? Typically they also tend to have, if there's children in the family, those children have moved away. Maybe there's some grandchildren, but mostly their parenting obligations have started to reduce and they're thinking about what's ahead of them, but also what's behind them. What's our legacy? Dr. Russell James said it best that our brains are not wired to think about our own death. And I think many of us in the sector know that our donors often try to avoid the conversation of their own mortality because it's icky and it's weird and we don't like to think about it. I might go so far to say that many of our senior leaders really struggle with planned giving because it has all those squishy questions that make us mortal, make us human, and sometimes are very hard to face. Planned giving, in my opinion, happens in spurts. To my view, when I work with donors, when I make appeals, when I send out some of the early communication that Conor has so thoroughly highlighted, I think people think about it from time to time. And things that might pull it forward a little bit for them are things like friends. A friend passed away unexpectedly. There's that individual in his 60s who has cancer. There's someone's wife who has succumbed to Alzheimer's and is changing. They're seeing that change in their friends, and that makes them reflect, on their own mortality a little more. We will also see it around major events. The families coming together, not sure, maybe their parents are still alive. They're in their 60s, parents are in their 90s. I know many of them live in my building here, my other work, but certainly those conversations are starting to come to the fore. So we want to engage donors as they're ready to engage. And I love, Conor, your comment about just clear, simple wording. We're not trying to be nuanced. We're not trying to put flowers around it. Just really clear ideas and concepts and answers for people to talk about. I'll also just mention those family discussions take time to unfold. It takes time for mom and dad, if you go with a typical two-parent family, to have those conversations with each other, but also to involve the children and grandchildren in their late life planning. Back to you, Conor.
Thanks, James. And you're so right about the family discussions and how long they could take. And it was, I think Aaron might know better than me, but I'm going to say 10 years ago, maybe 9 years ago, that I presented on that exact topic in Banff, speaking about family matters and just enabling those really impactful conversations. And so, to follow up on what James was saying, all planned gifts require that deep trust and respect, and charitable giving, today, this morning, if anybody pays attention to live shows, live music in Canada, we are into the summer of live with Live Nation. There's $30 concert tickets available. So I bought 18 concert tickets, I think 20 concert tickets today. I'm sitting on about 40 for my summer now for my wife and my kids and I. So we have shows sometimes back to back, 3 in a row, sometimes a couple in a week. But the part of the brain that made the decision for me that I really want to go see the Who, and not the Who with the guitars, from way back, but the Who, the Mongolian throat singers, who are playing with Rob Zombie at the RBC Amphitheater. The part of the brain that decided that that was the thing that I want to do on a Tuesday night is the same part of the brain that says, I really care deeply about the CAGP Foundation. And if I can get Keith Thompson to wear a bow tie, I will make the largest single donation that I've ever made. Same part of the brain. Thank you so much, Aaron. For 10 years ago, I talked about that topic. The donor motivation is, it's using that discretionary part of the brain, same part of the brain, but at the same time, it's driven by values, it's driven by experience, it's driven by beliefs, more so than a deep love of live music, a deep love of being in those spaces. And so it's the same part of the brain, but it's different motivations, it's different things pulling on it. And using those AI and BI tools and scripts can actually automate a lot of the data collection that can help us inform on making decisions here. And donor surveys help us communicate and enable impact. And most charities, and I don't really have a way for anybody to do a show of hands, but hey, for yourself at your desk, and James, you can raise your hand for us. Have you ever sent out a mailer or an email that said, have you considered including a charity in your will? Yeah, I did. And then I learned that there are better ways to ask that question. Asking better questions helps us gain more intelligent responses that help us to actually build more trust, demonstrate transparency, and do more. And so let's talk a little bit about that. So gathering that critical intel, you're going to have a headline on your survey. And you're going to say the impact our organization is enabled by donors like you and a variety of partners. And we want to find more partners who are like you, because we like you and you like us. So let's work with the businesses that you like and who like you, and let's build this little community of like by them telling you who they are and that they like businesses and that they do really cool things with businesses and businesses do cool things with them. You end up with this really rich data that you can then go and take to prospective corporate partners, foundation partners, others in the business community to get them on your side. And I've done this in the past very successfully. I brought in a major car maker, a luxury automaker, with a relationship that resulted in more than 7 figures for the charity that I was working with at the time, from zero relationship to a very, very strong 2-year partnership that then continued on for years after. But that initial 2 years was over 7 figures. So one of the questions that we can ask is, my financial advisor represents, and just leave options there. One of the 4 big Canadian banks, a smaller bank or credit union, independent office, an international firm. I don't have a financial advisor. That's a little hint that if you have people within the CAGP network, you can include stories from them. You can have a blog post written by a Ryan Fraser, written by an Adam Malcolm, to really promote the work that they're doing, the good work that they're doing, helping people. And ask follow-ups. Are you comfortable telling us who you work with? Because we're really interested. Have you spoken with them about including charitable giving or philanthropy in your estate? And is it us? You can ask that question. You can also ask, for my last update to my will, I worked with a lawyer at a big firm and a small firm, an independent advisor. I was referred to somebody by my financial advisor. I used the website. I bought a kit at Staples. It crashed my computer, but I still did it. And I don't have a will. And again, there's your plug to say, here's some advisors, some estate advisors, some lawyers who we recommend. Here's an online tool we recommend. Have you checked out our campaign around legacies? Come on, guys. It's there. You've seen it. We know. Come on. Follow-up questions. How many years has it been? Have you included charities in that? Is it us? Can you name the tool or the firm that you used? And then in your spare time, what do you like to do? And you can have any number of questions there. You can talk about anything that's relevant to your community. But gathering that information so that you have a better understanding of who your donors are tells you a little bit about demographic. It tells you a little bit about their motivation, and it helps you take good information to prospective partners out into the community, but also it helps you respond to them. So when James goes to talk to somebody and he sits down across the table and he's having a cup of tea with them, and he knows that they really like going to church and for nature walks, he knows going into that he has at least two things he can talk about that aren't related specifically to, hey, Mabel, can you cut me a check today? It's a little bit deeper than that, and it helps accelerate that trust building in a really open, authentic, and transparent way. I often use, so we have a question that I'm going to respond to here. Love the survey idea. Is it best to practice to send through mail, email, or a combination? I find when we're using conditional questions, digital is your best option. However, depending on your donor demographic, if they're not responsive online, paper is great. So is just picking up the phone and calling them. I find phone calls and digital to be the most effective at getting rich data. Paper is useful when you're getting sort of static, just getting you started information. And so as we move through,
if
go
I could
ahead,
just tag
James.
in on that, Conor. What I love is I prefer paper for a few reasons, but I'm always going to offer some sort of little prize. And sometimes the smallest token gift is the biggest incentive. So a gift card to a local coffee shop, gift $25 gift card to a local bakery, things like that, things that will play well in their audience. And if they're not in your community, I have phoned other communities and said, hey, I had a person I want to honor with a gift. Can you deliver a gift card? It works for my brother for Christmas all the time. There's a little East Indian place outside his place. They honor vegan foods, and I just send a gift card to him, once a year, twice a year. So there's always ways to do that, but those little gifts actually show the value in the transaction that you're looking to have with those donors. Thanks, Conor.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when we think about that strategic narrative and presence, Daniel, I'm going to get to your comment in a moment here. Strategic narrative and presence, that transparency and the openness are essential, to building trust and enabling impact. And I've talked a little bit about how times are different. It's 2026, and I started doing this almost 30 years ago, and the way that we communicate, the way that people hear us and receive us has changed so much. And the data science and what we can do with data now and information is so much better now than it was in the late 90s. That collection and segmentation is critical to optimizing for our survival as a sector, but also to make sure that we're engaging with the right donors at the right times, to make sure that they actually feel welcome to participate in our success as a charitable organization and welcome to contribute to the work that we're doing. Because this is, as much as we're saying, hey, can you please, we're actually asking them to participate. We're asking them to join us in doing something, not just cut a check. If this was transactional fundraising, it would be a very different conversation. And so when we think broadly, donors who are going to participate at a high level, they care about detailed statistics and financials, and we can argue about this until the cows come home. The truth is people want to know that you actually did a thing. Outputs and outcomes overall. What did we actually do? There's a throughput, money comes in, money goes out. And so how do we move that through? How do we tell that story? Outcomes related to a specific impact area. If you're a hospital, there's a large structure there that employs thousands of people. That's a hospital. Maybe they care specifically about one type of cancer, one type of surgery. How do you tell that story? And stewardship. People care deeply about stewardship. They will tell you that they don't, but they do. And so to be radically transparent, we're going to enhance our website to be radically transparent. And we're going to put all of our financial reports, all of our impact reports up there for everyone to find. They're not behind a wall. They're not, hey, send us an email, give us your contact information to receive it. No, this is our accountability to everyone, whether you've given to us or not, whether I know your name or not, here's that information. And you're going to promote that content on social media, in your newsletters, your website hero images. All of those are promoting these things on a regular basis. You create narrative streams that are easily found in your online channels. We live in an age of distrust, disinformation, misinformation. And if I tell James, you're the only person in the world that I'm telling this story to, James doesn't feel happy like he did in 2003 when we would do that. James feels like this guy's pulling my leg. He's lying to me. If he can't verify what I'm telling him and prove that this story exists outside of this 10, 20, 30 minutes that we spent together, the relationship that I have with James is broken. And so it's important for me to take stories when I go to meet with James that are at least based on, if not directly linked to, information that's on my website, that's in my impact reports, that's in my financials. Over to you, James.
Conor, I'll just tuck in, and I'm sure most people on the call know this, but many of your donors will start looking at your T3010s as provided to Revenue Canada, and that unless you want that to be the only truth they see out of your organization, what Conor is saying about sharing your annual reports, sharing your financials loud and proud is the way to go. I look a lot of T3010s, certainly in my consulting work, but for other charities and foundations. And I do have to say some of the data I see doesn't match what I think I'm seeing in annual reports. I'm not a financial advisor. I played one on TV, but I do think that charities should take the lead in the initiative to post their information upfront so donors don't have to do a dig into the T3010 if they don't need to. Thanks, Conor.
Yeah, I agree. And even linking, I've worked with clients before where we linked directly from their websites to their T3010. Do you want proof that we're a registered charity, that we are upstanding, that we're not on suspension? Well, click this link. If our profile loads, we're legit. And send your focus stories, including those links to multimedia content. You want to have a quick story or a 600-word blog story that links over to video, that links over to images, that has more meat to it, because people consume content in so many different ways now. And they're making decisions based on the content they receive. People are making decisions about making a planned gift, oftentimes without ever meeting anybody on this call. And so that decision is driven by the content that they consume that is put out by your organization, by your brand. And so you want to make sure that the content is there to support that thought process. And you want to clearly, openly, and regularly thank your donors without additional asks or invitations. And I know everybody on the call has heard this 100 times before. I'm going to beat that drum as well. Just say thank you. And I'm going to thank James once a month, every couple of months, whether he made a gift or not. I'm going to send a story out that says, hey, James, thank you so much for being a supporter. Here's some cool stuff we did. These are things that we've done over the years because of your support. And I'm going to reference it, I think, on my next slide, but even pulling stories from your archives to talk about the lasting impact of things. Daniel, I'm going to jump to your question here. Annual Giving Manager here. Is there a question that we can naturally work into a thank you call to support legacy teams? You know, I think the biggest question that worked for me, and I'll look to James as well for his thought here, is just asking people about their other charitable giving. That tends to be the entryway. So, you know, Daniel, I'm so grateful that you made this contribution to us, and thank you for believing in us. Do you mind if I ask about other charities that you're involved in? And people will tend to say, oh yeah, we give to this and this and this. And you know, my wife has included so and so in her long-term plans, and I have this one as well. They tend to be pretty open about it when it's something they talk about. I don't think that on the phone call, when you're not face to face with somebody, I have personally found it awkward, and maybe others have had a different experience. But on a phone call, if I don't know that donor personally, saying, hey, Daniel, you know, have you ever thought about putting something in your will for us? I found that awkward. I tried it a couple of times. Thankfully, the donors were receptive and didn't chew me out for it. but it didn't get me what I needed. And so when I flipped the question around with the last two of the three people that I tried it with, and I said, well, talk to me about your other charitable giving. I actually got really great data that went beyond what I had even thought I could glean from that conversation. And it's just because the conversation becomes much more natural, and it's about values and beliefs and what we care about. James, what's your perspective on this?
Great question. Thank you, Daniel. To my view, I love that question for so many reasons. Firstly, it tells you what level they're hitting at. Now, one of my favorite stories is I asked that question to a couple that I was just getting to know, and it was about their annual giving. It wasn't necessarily tied to plan giving, but suddenly they're talking about a named chair at a post-secondary institution in our country. Now, all of you, I think, would have alarm bells and tingles going down your spine if a donor starts talking about a named chair that otherwise you didn't know about. I think sometimes in the sector, we feel, and we're pretty competitive sometimes. I confess I can be competitive too. We feel that we need to be a donor's top charity, and I think that is absolutely incorrect and untrue. I think I want to be in the top 5 to 10 charities my donor supports. And if there's an opportunity for me to move up from fourth to third or third to second, or maybe even become their first and primary charity, I'm going to take that initiative. But I certainly want to applaud the other charities that they support. I want to understand why they give to the other charities. Sometimes when you ask that question, you're going to find some very emotive and powerful responses. And I think about some donors I've asked that question to, and they will say things like, well, we give to this cancer fund or this therapy program because we lost a son or a granddaughter to this cause. Suicide, of course, is just such a blight upon our society and certainly for young people. So there's all sorts of very intimate ways to ask to get into those questions. I would warn your fundraising team to be prepared for longer conversations as their manager. Let them have time to let the phone call proceed, because when someone's sharing that sort of personal information, it's an amazing opportunity for you and your team to engage them, but it's also something that you need to respond to as a human being. Thank you.
No. And I think I may have glossed over kind of the easy one here, Daniel, because I dove right into bigger questions, and I think James and I were both led there by me. But why did you give? I think everybody's asking that already. But to James's point, find out what motivated them and what brought them in. Um, Thinking again about the good work that everybody on this call is doing, and what you can do with automation and data tools to really craft an omni-channel experience. And I talked about getting information out for everybody in all of the places where they're looking. Um, get your impact and financial reports and the reminders about them automated. You don't have to spend 3 days, 4 days, a week clicking send on all of these personalized email. You can actually run a script that links through your Outlook, and it just works in the background while you're doing your regular day job. Stories about your impact program that people care about the most, because you know that data, you can automate that script so that those go out as soon as they're published. James, I know that you really care about this one issue because you flagged it in a survey, because I know this about you and it's in my database. Now, every time I publish a story that has that tag, that's coming to you automatically. I don't have to worry about it. And that can be twice a month, that might be twice a year, that might be once every 2 years, but it's automatically coming to you because it's something you care about. And targeted stories about planned giving, including stories from the archives. So now we're going to say, you know, Susan left a planned gift to us in 1994. And Susan was a longtime volunteer. And I want to talk about the legacy of the $25,000 that she left us in 94 and what that built and what that grew into. Because when people think about their legacy, they think about, I'm going to leave you $100,000 and what's the thing you're going to build and how long does it live? When you talk about how long these programs live, you know what? That program that Susan paid for is not called the same thing anymore, and it runs differently. But it launched a cascade, a series of events that led to incredible transformational work for this charity. And we're so grateful to her for that, and to her family for helping her to make that gift. You want to have information about engaging the whole family in philanthropy. Don't be afraid to give tips about talking about this stuff and targeted stories about the impact of their financial firm. So think about that donor who says, well, I work with RBC, they're my financial advisor. RBC is actually where I got my estate advisor and who helped me with my will. They connected me with the lawyer. And I bank, you know that I'm transferring my stock donations, my shares are coming through my RBC account. Tell those stories. Say, did you know that RBC actually accounts for 6 million, 12 million, $10 million of the work that we do, that they have many of our donors and their team members are actually enabling so much impact by caring for their customers the way they're caring for you. What a great choice you've made. Send them every newsletter and every update. Even if they're a 7-figure donor, they care and they want to see it. So tell them that story. I'm so used to meeting charities who say, well, we don't send those to our 6 and 7-figure donors. We get it to them one-on-one. We deliver it to them by hand. No, send it to them in the moment because otherwise they feel left out. You can bring it up. You can book a coffee meeting that week that it comes out. And then you go and you have a cup of coffee, you eat some lunch, and you talk about it. And you say, what did you see in that you cared about? That's more impactful than hand delivering it to them before they have a chance to read it. Focusing invites to your outdoor events, to the information about your other events, everything included in those newsletters. Get people engaged, get them out of the house, get them to come out no matter what you're doing. Out of house events are fantastic for getting people to engage. And start prospecting. Use that data, use the questions, use every tool that you have in every member of your team to start looking at more personalized conversations. This is where everybody, I'm sorry to say, I'm going to stop talking quite so much. I am so excited to welcome James Perkins as the leader of the next part of our conversation.
Perfectly. And I'll certainly be your guide. So thank you for the tee up here, Conor. I love how much we agree on, even though we specialized in different areas in this presentation. So folks, at some point in your relationship with these donors, they're going to become more than just names and addresses. They're going to become people, and you will get a chance to know them. You'll get a chance to interact with them. Depending on where you are, where they are, how um, included or involved they want to be. Maybe you do meet them at an outdoor event. Maybe you have known them for years. Maybe there's someone who was a former staff member, a former volunteer. And please do not hesitate to ask your former staff for planned gifts because they know the mission better than any one of us. But at some point, that relationship's going to evolve or it's going to start to flower. And that's why I chose the photo we have here. If we could advance the slide, please. So here we have a couple. The older members of the webinar here will recognize those faces. Harry and Sally have been donors for 15 years. They are monthly donors and they attend organization events that are outside. They've never been to a gala or a sit-down event, the stuffy rubber chicken things that we so are want to do. They have a financial advisor and they updated their will 5 years ago. They've spoken to their advisor about giving, but haven't quite yet included a charity in their will. They spend their spare time with immediate and extended family. And of course, these are things you can learn when you're having those conversations about their interests, about their hobbies, and some of the wonderful prompts that Conor talked about earlier. And you want to try to figure out, are they impressed with you as a specific, the general organization that you provide, or are there specific programs within your organization that really speak to them or have a resonate with them? You could advance the slide. I think we all know people give to people, and that is doubly true in planned giving. We have many relationships. We build those relationships over time. And over time, they come to see the value of our work, the value of the organization, and they begin to see themselves closer and closer to that mission as something that they themselves embody. We want to make sure on the flip side, do we understand their values? And to Conor's question, what motivated you to make this donation? We can ask the same about a planned gift or any of their interactions. What motivated you? What called you to or moved you from sitting there and sitting at your computer and reading to actually doing something? Do we listen thoughtfully and respond? One of the most wonderful comments I got from a donor who unfortunately is no longer with us, and I'll try to stop not cry here, but was she complimented how well we listen. And I think that is integral in those plan giving intimate conversations. We're talking about life and legacy and values and a life that they will no longer necessarily be a part of at some point. So how do we listen to that, and how do we think thoughtfully respond is, I think, critical to that. Do we share our stories of success? And I will go a step further. Do we share stories of where we've been challenged? So I give to a lot of charities. Any charity that I work with as a consultant, I always give to, because I want to see from the other side of the coin what I'm feeling and getting off that charity as a donor. So I make a lot of donations around. I will sometimes get the standard form letter with my tax receipt on the bottom. And sometimes I get a little more. Bonnie Lee, I don't know if you're on the call, but Bonnie Lee Farms in Nova Scotia, my gosh, like, you got to go look at their stuff. It's amazing. I get very personalized cards that I know are not personalized, but I myself am pulled into the story and the passion with they share it. And lastly, and to the point of the picture, is this fun? Is it uplifting? We're talking about some heavy stuff. And that is only one small part of the conversation that Conor and I are alluding to. There needs to be fun, there needs to be enjoyment, and there needs to be joy. And you can see the couple there. I believe they were married 70 years in that photo. That's not Harry and Sally, but we can pretend that it was. And you can see that Sally still has a smile on her face, like she just met her beau there. So we can advance to the next slide. And relationships, of course, take time. It's going to take time to understand what your donors' interests are. What are their passions? What are their uh, fears? What are they worried about? And it's going to be taking decades to do that. Unfortunately, we know, statistically speaking, the average fundraiser at a charity lasts 3 to 5 years. Some of them times it's only 18 months. And we need to understand and have an accountability to each other and to this profession and to the charities that we are serving, that we take diligent and thoughtful notes along the way. We want to introduce Harry and Sally to other people who are already in that preferred impact program, into that plan giving program. And I'm going to just touch back to what Conor was saying about Conor used a gal from 1994 who had made a planned gift. My donors are judging the weight of what I'm proposing to them by how they see me treat others. So if you show reverence to that founder, I believe her name was also Sally, but if you show reverence to those previous donors who have already gone on to make their planned gift, it helps them understand what they can expect when they are no longer able to see that. Things like plan giving tours, plan giving walkthroughs. They are usually, I would suggest, small and intimate. You can do maybe a little tea sometimes, depending how many you have. But logistics, I don't find that works as much in practice as it would in theory. We can advance the slide. Relationship documentation. If Conor has his bugaboos about what we do well and what we don't. If there's one thing I could say, is we really do not record our relationships with our donors well. Too often, I'm seeing donor databases that have zero information about a donor, which tells me a lot of things I don't want to hear. Firstly, that the gifts are transactional. And when donors feel that the gifts are transactional, you are not going to facilitate the planned gift that requires 5, 10, 15, 25 years of relationship. What you see here is actually our planned giving wall here at Bethany Manor. This is something I brought in, about 7 or 8 years ago. There are some donors listed on there by name. That is, they're by their choice, and I'm very thoughtful how we do that, and I always ask. I have donors that have their a little asterisk beside their names. They have since passed. I have other donors who have not passed. Their names are on there, and I will spend a few dollars to update those when that time comes. I also am a big fan of anonymity. We have a lot of donors that do not want their name in lights. Here in Saskatchewan, they look like, and I'll use a bit of a stereotype, but they look like the poor farmer. They are driving old, beat up, out of date Ford pickup trucks. Conor, you know the type. They have old clothes, old mattresses, and millions and millions and millions in the bank account. I just was talking to someone last week about a small quarter of land here in Saskatchewan that goes for $800,000. So there is extreme wealth in individuals that we wouldn't necessarily think. Part of living in smaller communities and having your values shaped in smaller communities is that you do not want people to know necessarily what your wealth is and where you are sharing your wealth. And there's all sorts of small town political reasons, small town family reasons, large family reasons that individuals would choose anonymity. We always want to respect that. It's a little hard to see, but they almost look like kind of coins or buttons on this donor wall, and it will say anonymous, but remembered. And of course, this is in our lobby here at Bethany Manor. And even though donors are anonymous, I want them to know that they are remembered, and I want other donors to know they are remembered. Could advance the slide, please. So when you are keeping in touch, your fundraiser and ED should focus on personal stewardship calls, letters, emails. I've worked with a lot of executive directors. Sometimes they have the time for your giving team, sometimes they don't. But I expect, and I'm going out as a fundraiser here and Plan Giving fundraiser, that we will spend a little bit of time on it. I'm going to ask you to meet the key leaders, key donors, key people. I try not to take too much of their time, but I will need you for an afternoon in June to go have a coffee with these amazing people who have intentions for us. I work on the 7 thank yous per gift discipline. So I need a donor to hear thank you 7 times in different ways, written, oral from different people, before I'm comfortable making an ask again. There is some statistics on this, and forgive me, it's been a few years since I've seen it. But one of the best questions I've heard is, when can we ask again? Well, once you've done those 7 thank yous. And I do not put asks in thank you letters. I have a little pet peeve with thank you letters, and this is just my personal opinion. I want a thank you letter that is going to go and stay in a special file that donor keeps on my charity. And many of you have seen those files. They're amazing. I went to one donor's family, uh, going for a personal visit, sat down, and I actually saw the birthday cards I sent the couple over the years lined up. And now she had obviously saved them to put them on display, but that is the material they save. Now, that little piece of paper that says their charitable tax receipt, their value, that's the stuff that give to the account. Don't mix the two up, please. Please separate them if you can, and that's just my personal view. Cards. You need to send birthday cards. Everyone has a birthday. Everyone should feel special on their birthday. Buy a big batch of birthday cards. You can get them cheap if you want to, but you don't have to, and send them. Condolences. I live in a small city. Saskatoon's about 250,000. And often when someone passes away, we still have published obituaries, or I will hear it through the grapevine that so-and-so's family members passed. If you are aware of it, send a little card. It never hurts, but it establishes that you are part of their family and part of that relationship. And the one-on-one engagement, I try to focus on one-to-one personal visits. It could be in their home, it could be in a coffee shop, it might be in my office, it might be in a restaurant, especially for those top donors that are closest to your mission that you know really have the ability to make an impact. Spend that time with them. Conor, I love your comment about sharing the information prior. Absolutely. I do like to do the handoff, but actually I probably need to rethink that based on what you've shared today. I see a question here. The Nova Scotia agency, I want to say Bonnie Lee Farms. I'm giving a huge shout out to them. I will make sure that Aaron includes it in the notes when I'm writing it out. I believe it's Bonnie Lee Farms, and they work with adult individuals who have lifelong learning disabilities or disabilities. Late stage relationships. This is where I think we as charities really fall down. As our donors age, We need to be introduced to families and family members and advisors. We need to be part of their bigger world. And I find donors are really open to that. They understand that their worlds are changing. The 94-year-old will have the 65-year-old daughter come see me and say hello. It's important to have that relationship established early because we're acting on the same, we want to be on the same team as them. We want to make sure that Sally and Harry's legacy, and that is how they chose to put their names publicly, Sally and Legacy, Sally and Harry, pardon me, not Harry and Sally. And we honor that. We are working on their legacy together, and we need their help, and hopefully they need our help as well. Now, at some point, someone's going to let you know that someone has a cognitive decline or health issue that really don't make them suitable for major gift or plan giving approaches. And we need to be very mindful of that. There's some amazing CAGP speakers over the years that I've seen present on that, and that continues to be an issue in this sector. And I'm really appreciative of the leadership CAGP has shown at the last few conferences I've been to that have speakers specializing on those questions. However, I will add the caveat that I've been to those sessions, and there's some amazing, it was a lawyer fundraiser combo, I want to say in Vancouver. I think it was just over a year ago, almost 2 years ago now. And I was sitting with the table with a bunch of our colleagues who were specialists in personal health sector. And they understood that as soon as their donor, their planned giving donor, is talking about a deficit in their mental health or cognitive health, that they have to disengage immediately. And I absolutely think that's the wrong answer. Here's why. We do need to be very cognizant that we are speaking suitably and appropriately with those individuals. It absolutely changes the game, but they are still our friends. We need to still engage them and tell them about our work. We will not solicit them anymore. We will be mindful how we solicit if it's early stage and there's still signs of coherence. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, I think, on the next slide, if my notes are right here. But they're still our friends. And what a hurtful thing to do, to pull back your friendship because someone has shared with you something very personal and very intimate. Can I actually go back to the previous card? Thanks, Connor. What I recommend is that if we know the kids, we know the family, the power of attorney, whomever that person is that they've invited into your circle, that we start to invite them into the asks. So for example, I have one donor I work with, advanced stage, has limited health, and I still enjoy the conversation, but the capacity to understand is probably weaning a little bit. I will actually have a conversation with a family member prior to visiting that person. And that conversation with the family member is where the ask is for the annual gift. I can then go to the donor, have that conversation when everything has been preordained by the power of attorney or by the family member. But I still show the respect to them that we're asking them for that support. So there's ways like in this conversation that you can make sure those individuals are brought into the circle without soliciting someone you should not ethically or legally be soliciting. Now we can go ahead. And the relationship changes a lot. I unfortunately go to a lot of funerals. Death is a reality. And based on 2026, MAID is a changing mortality in our landscape in Canada. I saw a stat, unfortunately, I couldn't find the reference for it, but I believe we're about 100,000 MAID deaths in Canada since it was legalized in, I want to say 2016, and someone on this call will, of course, correct me. But when feasible, I do think it's important to stop and acknowledge our relationships, that we have lost a friend to the organization insofar as is appropriate. So if there is a funeral, your fundraiser or your senior leader should be attending. Board chairs sometimes get a little weirded out about it, but depending on the donor and the relationship that individual or that couple had within the organization, that would be appropriate. And it's also appropriate to send a card of condolence to the next of kin. Nothing is wrong about that. That is just good friendship, saying goodbye to a friend. Next slide. And then we have honoring your legacy. And I notice we're getting close to the top of the hour here, so I'm going to go through this quickly. But remember, the executive charged with communicating and transferring the gift to the organization. That usually happens without a hitch. There may be questions around that we can help with, but generally we're still on the sidelines for it. We do want to confirm with children how the donors wish to be recognized. Typically, the donor will follow what mom and dad said beforehand, if it's the kids or a family member. And we want to honor that. We want to make sure that they understand that we are following the intentions their family had. I want to see a thank you letter go to the kids. You guys, thank you so much for your parents' thoughtful gift for XYZ. This is amazing. This is why. This is what we're going to do. And if you're able to have a giving wall, updating that giving wall is a very nice touch. My last bugaboo is that please remember, charities, your charitable receipt goes to the couple. It is not the estate of the couple. The paperwork legally, goes to the estate, but in your recognition protocols, it should go to the couple. And just to be clear, how we recognize and how we acknowledge the tax receipt are two different ways. Harry and Sally in our case, or Sally and Harry in this case, made that gift years before any of the will stuff had to be actualized. So I want to honor those two and the amazing forethought they had and the appreciation they had for our charity. That concludes my portion. Tara's giving me the 5-minute look here as she slowly makes her way to the front of the room.
I'm going to stop sharing just so that we can open things up. We do have a question from Alexandra that I was typing a response to, and it says, what strategies have we found work best when building relationships with a donor's power of attorney or their children? I'll delete my typed response, and I'm just going to say, I asked the donor to invite them. You know, the next time, I've heard so much about your daughter, Tara. Can you include her in our next cup of coffee or lunch that we have? Would love to connect with them and talk to them. I believe firmly that we don't do anything with a representative, a power of attorney, a lawyer, anybody who represents that donor, without the donor knowing. It's respectful to them, and it would damage the relationship beyond repair if we did not include the donor in that conversation. Tara, are we good to allow James a response, or did I cut him off right there?
James, go ahead.
I would just concur with Conor. It's a very thoughtful, very sensitive conversation. Again, you want to make sure that you're speaking to the right people at the right time. There will be donors that know you can't talk to my kids or my power of attorney, and then you obviously have to be very thoughtful how you do continue. Maybe the solicitation stops right there because they won't let you talk to the power of attorney. In the situation I quoted, I knew that was an okay person for me to reach to. They had been mentioned, they had been spoken of, they'd been referred to.
Amazing. Thank you both so much. We are unfortunately very close to the bottom of the hour. This has been a really wonderful human-focused sharing, and on behalf of everyone here, thank you so much. There are a few notes that even I jotted down because they serve as reminders that, you know, we do the gut check and we approach people the way we want ourselves and our family members to be approached, and we conduct ourselves in ways that find and keep that balance. So my friends, before we do close out today, I definitely want to take a moment to thank you all for being here. In the chat, amongst the many thanks of the presenters, you're going to see a link to a short survey. Your feedback is very, very important to us. We promise it's short. So please take a moment and complete that. A few opportunities around education coming up. Gift planning fundamentals. If you've been waiting, we have 2 great opportunities. One being online in June over 2 days, which is going to be our French version of Gift Planning Fundamentals. And then in English, if you happen to be in Vancouver on June 17th, there will be an in-person English Gift Planning Fundamentals. And for those of you in this webinar space, once again, we will be hosting a webinar on May 27th called Ethical Fundraising, Navigating Consent, Age, and Vulnerable Donors, presented by Tina Tarachian, Jennifer Bish, Hannah Grandishar, and moderated by Denisha Balu Shivji. All of these details can be found on the CAGP website. As a quick reminder that CAGP's education program, including this Webinar Wednesday series, is made possible through the generosity of supporters of the CAGP Foundation, allowing for education opportunities like this one to be available at no charge. If you're inspired to support the work that we do to strengthen our sector, please consider making a gift. We can be found at the cagpfoundation.org. And so again, Les, thank you for being here, and thank you to Pear Tree Canada for supporting Webinar Wednesdays. For those of you who did hear, today is also Summer of Live. I picked up a few concert tickets myself too, Conor, so feel free to check that out. Not a big fan of Ticketmaster or Live Nation, but affordable concerts are something that we can definitely take advantage of. To all of you joining us, thank you so much again. Thank you to our presenters, and I wish you all an incredible end to your day and a wonderful week. Thank you.